Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is that time of year again. It is bowl season, and we have none other than Sports Memo's own John Ryan joining us. You see Jonesy at the top of the screen. And John, welcome aboard. You've been on with us for several shows now, and finally, Jonesy and I get to be on air with you.
It's great being on this show, and I appreciate you inviting me. And that music, I'm like ready to say, Coach, put me in the game.
Let's go.
Great introduction.
That's right. I appreciate that. And it's shout out to AG and Ant for a great show that you guys put together last week. That was awesome, breaking down how you approach things. And so I want, if anyone wants to go back and take a look at that, there's a lot of like just evergreen stuff there for how to approach betting, how you analyze things, what goes into your analysis, and then what has helped to produce a record like this. This is your college football record, and with some NFL stuff sprinkled in. I'll let you kind of go through and explain like what goes into some of this stuff in a minute. But there you go, guys. The record kind of speaks for itself. I don't see anything under 65% on this board right here. So these picks are, you got to bet responsibly, but you can bet confidently with the advice of John's analysis here. So let's go in a little bit for how you approach bowl games, because bowl season is different from the rest of the season. Like, it's, in some cases the stakes are insanely high. In other cases, you have guys sitting bowl games out, coaches moving, coaches coming in, coaches leaving, players leaving, all this sorts of stuff. So what goes into your analysis on that?
Well, the coaches leaving, we talked before the show went live here about Brian Kelly, who I can honestly say I've never liked his coaching style, and I don't see the fit with the LSU culture at all. I think you saw that right away when he showed up on campus, starting quarterback and the star wide receiver going to the transfer portal almost immediately. Maybe they went in the portal before he actually arrived on campus. I don't know, but that has to be a head scratcher. And there is a bowl game that I wanted to just talk about a little bit with Notre Dame going against Oklahoma State. And I think the three of us actually like Oklahoma State in this one, and I certainly do as well. So bowlers that are on a 3 or more game ATS win streak and favored by not more than 3.5 points and have 10 or fewer wins on the season have been busts, going just 12 and 27 straight up, 10 and 29 against the number for 25%. And the under has won 75% of the time since 1980. Since 2006, these terrible gutter ball bowlers, as I like to call them, are just 6 and 11 straight up, 5 and 12 against the number for 29%. And again, the under is 12, 4, and 1 for 75%. I really don't see how in the world number 5 Notre Dame is going to show up. They, always want to get in the college football playoff. One of the things I look for is teams that want to be in a bowl, like the armed forces, those, Army, Navy, Air Force, and we can talk about them later. They always come prepared, and it's part of their culture. But I think Notre Dame here could be like in a tremendously bad spot. And Oklahoma State's number 9, and they had a great season, and I see them being wanting to be there a heck of a lot more than Notre Dame. And the system I gave out supports Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and you've seen that too with like the NIT NCAA tournament stuff, where you see some of these teams that are on the bubble and they get bounced out, and they're from big conferences and they kind of expect more, and they mail it in that first round, and they're bounced by some non-Power 5 conference school, runs them out of the gym in that first round of the NIT. They're done, and they don't even care. They've kind of they didn't make the dance, so they're not really interested in it. And Notre Dame's in a prime spot because I think they really were hoping that they could get into the playoff. Jonesy, what's your what do you see with that matchup there?
Well, I see Notre Dame losing that probably by a touchdown. I
Mm.
mean, even more than a touchdown, to be honest with you, because they're in flux. Like you said, they expected a whole lot more, and just by virtue of the fact that they're Notre Dame, Notre Dame kind of has a sense of entitlement to the national championship picture. There's a lot of times where Notre Dame has a schedule that is abysmal, where they're playing nobodies, and just because they have one loss or no losses, they get in the title picture. And I liken it back to the times where you would have teams come out of the WAC conference and they'd be undefeated and they wouldn't get a sniff of the national title championship. But Notre Dame can waltz in having their only signature win be like a Purdue or something like that. So, Notre Dame is definitely going to get beat. Their coach is gone. The culture has changed there. They're in flux. They don't know what's going to happen now. So I can definitely see them kind of getting dog walked.
I'm glad you're with me.
Yeah, I mean, before we even talked about that, I had Oklahoma State in that with the 2.5. They're giving Oklahoma State 2.5 points, so I'll take that all day. Might even go money line on that one because you could get a nice little premium on that for your money. The other thing is, like, Gundy's kind of a bulldog when it comes to like getting his resume, building his resume, continuing to elevate that Oklahoma State program. I think he has designs, and he's been very, very close to the playoff picture and to, even the BCS national championship game back when Brandon Whedon and Justin Blackman were there. They were percentage points away on the computer polls from getting in ahead of Alabama in 11. And so, like, I see a hunger there. Now, I don't know, there is some continuity with Marcus Freeman, and I can't remember the offensive coordinator. They've kept a lot of the staff. That's one of the other things that disappointed me about Brian Kelly coming to LSU is none of his staff came with him. None of his players are coming with him. Like,
wow. So none of his recruits have joined the transfer portal to come with him. See, I didn't really look into what happened with Brian. No. So basically, he's not as well liked as I thought. Because he doesn't seem like a well-liked guy. He doesn't seem like a guy that can galvanize people. Mm-hmm. He also seems like a guy who pisses people off. And that's going to go off like a fart in church in the South.
Yeah. That's well said. I think I remember when he was first at Notre Dame, it was on national TV. He put his hand in a kid's helmet because he didn't execute something, perfectly right. And it was just it's not the way I would want my kid coached.
Yeah,
and he does have an abrasive side to him. I mean, he's hard to like. Mm-hmm. And when you're 18 to 22, are you going to respond to a guy like that?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, you respond to a guy like Saban, who's a teacher of the game, and it didn't seem like Kelly has ever had that. Mm. And I am disappointed he's going to LSU because I
am too.
I just don't see the fit, number one, and maybe he'll only be there for a year or two, and then he'll go somewhere else. But I don't see him as an SEC coach, and I think he's going to get out coached just about every single week.
See, I'm happy he's going to LSU, and I'm going to tell you why. Because Chad is a huge LSU fan. I think he was conceived on the campus of LSU, and this man.
It's a good story.
In my mind, he was. I'm sure he wasn't. But I want to see LSU crash and burn anytime they play because Chad loves them so much. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. But
this is what it's like being in business with this guy. I just want everybody to know this is what Jonesy. No, I'm just joking.
That's what I do. Listen, just when you think that you're in, I give you that. So no, seriously. I'm really not happy about. I'm not happy about Brian Kelly going to LSU because college football is better when LSU's good. College football is better when the SEC is competitive. You know what I mean? And it's like I don't want to see Alabama run away with it all because for whatever reason, Georgia always has a great recruiting class. They always have a great team. It always looks good. But somehow, some way, they find a way to screw the pooch. And they never win the SEC. It's like Alabama has reigned over them for the longest. And before Alabama, it was Florida. Mm-hmm. They're always the bridesmaid and never the bride. And LSU is that team that will come every now and again and disrupt it and take things. Mm-hmm. LSU and Auburn.
And Auburn, yep. That's it. It's Auburn, LSU, Florida, and Alabama. Ever since the last time Tennessee did anything was T. Martin right after Peyton Manning graduated. Tennessee won the national championship, but other than that, it's been those four schools LSU, Florida, Alabama, and Auburn, who have been the only ones to play in or win the national championship. Well, Georgia played in it, but that was because they were playing against another SEC school, so of course they lost. Yeah, but yeah. So all right, so let's get off of that game, but we'll stay in the SEC. I'm interested to see how Florida performs in it's the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl. You got to love these names. But they're playing against Central Florida, and they're 6.5-point favorites with a new coach coming in, Billy Napier from University of Louisiana Lafayette, and Emory Jones talking about playing in that game, but then he's done afterwards. So what's your takeaway on that one, if you don't mind, John?
Yeah, it's a great matchup, and I like the fact that it's a state rivalry game. A couple years ago, UCF was complaining that they weren't in the college football playoff, right. And I think it would have gone the same way as if Notre Dame got in the college football playoff, because what have they done? Sorry, I'm still talking about them, but they've think they're entitled, as Jonesy said, and then they get killed by whoever they play, and it's a joke. This game is kind of interesting because Florida was the team that gained like 350 some rushing yards on Alabama.
Yeah, and most of that was in the second half in a comeback.
Dan Mullen ran it down their throat.
Mm-hmm. He did, and then he ran out of the stadium after he got fired like 3 weeks later. Just mind blowing, the loss of that. When you fire a coach, you got to be thinking about, well, who's available out there that's going to be better, or who's going to run the team more in the way we want to create the culture for the players. Mullen, I'm not saying he's the best coach ever, but you got to think like who is going to replace that?
Yeah, there was no contingency plan at all.
Yeah,
it's weird. It kind of leads me to believe. Bizarre. It leads me to believe that there's more than meets the eye to why they fired Dan Mullen. It has to be something that has nothing to do with football, and that's all I'm going to say. A little.
Maybe he dropped an F-bomb to a trustee.
Yeah. Hey, Ed Ogeron did his thing that way, so it's not unheard of. But you see what's happening with Urban Meyer as well, former Florida coach. But that one's going to be an interesting game. I still like Florida in that game, even minus the 6.5, just because. Really? I think Billy Napier comes in with something to prove, and there's enough talent on that roster that there hasn't been a whole lot of exodus, through the transfer portal over the last couple of years. They've actually had some people come in to that program. So I think maybe some of what was happening with Mullen was that there was a disconnect with how that talent was actually performing, except for that. That game, that Alabama game, they were down 21-3 in the first quarter. I thought they had no prayer. And they came back and they had Alabama on the ropes, very similar to the way Auburn did. And so I think all of that game comes down to, and this is why bowl games are so difficult to predict, is because there are all these caveats about like who's going to be partying that weekend and who's going to get suspended, in the host city, and what players are actually motivated to be there, who wants to actually play and really go out with a bang versus who is just kind of going through the motions and mailing it in. So, but all things being equal, I like Florida in that game because I have a lot of respect for Billy Napier as a coach, and I think he's in his first week, on the job, because he just finished coaching that game for Louisiana last week, because that was part of his deal. Was he's like, you got to let me coach the conference championship game in the Sun Belt before I leave. And so Florida was like, yeah, cool, do your thing. And they pulled that off. And then, so now he's on the job full time. And I think he's going to start to cultivate that. And they've got, what do they have? Like a week. It's Christmas Eve, that game. So, I kind of like Florida minus the points even in that one. What are some other games that kind of jump out to you as, because you have a lot of games that are either double digit or near double digit spreads, some games that jump out to you that say, hey, wait a second, there's something I need to look into a little bit more, where you need to dig into your deeper metadata?
Well, there's a couple on the radar. One that I want to mention here is pretty amazing, and it's Western Kentucky playing Appalachian State, and I don't know the name of the bowl, but they're playing in a bowl.
It is the roofclaim.com Boca Raton Bowl.
There you go. I like the location. That would be a fun place to go and hang out.
Great. Yeah, the Boca's gorgeous, man. I'm sure
it's a bunch of senior citizens is down there, though.
Yeah,
you have everybody showing up to the game with walkers.
You're not that far from Miami. You can still have fun.
That's true, yeah. You play golf over there. You play golf in Boca and then go to Miami to South Beach.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's a full day.
That's right. So, so it's a -3 for Appalachian State. And so the one thing I looked at this, I like the over in this one. I don't know how I feel about the game itself, but I've watched these two teams, and like Western Kentucky can score, and they have a hard time stopping people, and Appalachian State can score too. So I think it's got a very good chance of being a shootout.
Yeah, here you have a matchup like that. I agree with the matchup. App State is the key, though, because they lost the championship game. And that's one of the first things I do with bowl games is championship losers right away I start looking at. So this particular matchup, they find themselves installed as a favorite, as you mentioned. And favorites that lost their conference championship game that are favored, including Pick'em, have gone 11-18 straight up, 7-22 against the number for 24%. But there's more. The more is that if they lost their conference championship game by more than 7 points, they don't want to go to a bowl and they don't show up. And this is amazing. It's 4-11 straight up, 0-15 against the spread. So
that's a bad beat right there.
I think you know who I'm on.
Yeah. Well, and Western Kentucky, they won their conference championship game. So they're on the opposite side of that. So it's interesting that you say that because there's one team that kind of doesn't fit that mold, and that is Georgia. Georgia playing in the college football playoff got after they went up early against Alabama, they ended up getting their asses handed to them in the SEC championship, and you look at their schedule, and it's not all that impressive. They were beating teams badly, but they weren't really playing the level of schedule that any of the teams in the SEC West were playing. And frankly, even that, I would say even maybe Michigan was playing. And I'm not a huge fan of Michigan, but I think Michigan probably played a tougher schedule up until the conference championship game than Georgia did. But Georgia has a chance. I don't think you can say these guys don't want to be here. They've got a chance to redeem themselves. Right. So how does that translate when you look at those types of scenarios?
And that would immediately disqualify this from that matchup because there is a tomorrow. There are only semifinal games. It's not an environment where App State is disappointed being favored and lost their championship game. They thought they lost their opportunity to make the season a complete success. So now it's like there's nothing after this. It's the last game. Sure, we'll play hard, but there's a difference between playing hard and playing hard with intensity. And, I think Western Kentucky will definitely want to show up and win this game, just outright. Yeah. But with the Georgia game, I would disqualify this because the fundamentals of that matchup just don't even compare. Just the fact that there is a championship game, if they win, is motivation enough to show up.
Yeah, but is 7.5 or 8 or however I've seen it as high as 8.5. That seems like a lot to me for the way that Georgia kind of got exposed a little bit.
I haven't run my predictive models on it yet, but I can tell you I have a lean on Georgia, believe it or not, it's mainly because of. Michigan had everything go right for them this year. I mean, everything. They could fumble the ball and recover it. It just was a magical year. And the luck runs out. And I just think this is the game. I know I like Georgia all the way up to 9.5. And it'll never get there, but my models have it as priced at 9.5. So it's recency bias. We always talk about that, right?
Yep.
Georgia's coming off the humiliating loss, and some people say that was a conspiracy loss. I mean, that's nonsense, too. And Michigan coming off the big win.
Right.
Finally beats Ohio State for the first time in his career. I just think it's you have an overbought Michigan, you have a very cheap Georgia in that matchup. But everybody, that's what makes market, right? It's fun to be on opposite sides sometimes and figure it out.
Yeah, and the Michigan, I guess Big Blue travels well as far as betting is concerned. Like they carry a lot of weight. And then you look at Georgia, and I think there's a healthy amount of skepticism even among Georgia faithful that here we go again, So I think you may be right. You may be onto something that there could be an overbought Michigan, underbought and oversold Georgia in that sense. The relative strength index on Georgia is in the 20s right now. So you might be onto something there.
And I promise to let Jonesy talk. But the one thing I do want to mention is defensively. My analytics, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, we haven't seen a defense like Georgia in more than 2 decades. I look at yards per point, for example, and going into the Alabama game, the championship game, their yards per point allowed was over 30. There's only been 7 teams to ever go above 25. Nobody has ever had a defense with 30 or higher. Off the top of my head, I don't remember if the Alabama game took them out of the plus 30, but they're still in the high 20s. And their differential between yards per point allowed and yards per point gained, they're just a grinding offense. It's not spectacular. But again, they were ranked second going into the Alabama game nationally in offensive yards per point. So the differential between the two, that blew away anything that I've seen in 30 years. So I still grab a hold of that too. Like, I get what you're saying, that the faithful and even myself will question, like, okay, is this another Georgia team that's going to not finish the deal? And am I going to be stupid, putting a 4%er on Georgia and watching Michigan win, which would be worse than watching Notre Dame beat Oklahoma State? Not real fond of Notre Dame and Michigan, if you figured it out.
I gather that.
But and I'm not sure. I know why I am with Notre Dame, and now I'm going to start liking Notre Dame again because there's one guy that's not there anymore. But it's really the coaching. Like Harbaugh, I was at the Penn State game in whenever it was 20. It was when they were both ranked in the top 10, if not the top 5. It was at Happy Valley. And 111,000 people on a Saturday night prime time, and the whole stadium, especially the student body, was waiting for Harbaugh to throw his headphones and throw his clipboard. And when he did, the place went absolutely nuts. So, I was always taught that if you control your temper and you don't throw things, right? So I guess when he does it, he kind of looks like a child. But anyway, Jonesy, it's your turn.
No, I mean, listen, man. Hey. I am going to have to go against both of you. I think that Georgia is going to handle Michigan easily. And I'm going to tell you why. Michigan, in the way that they're run first, that smash mouth kind of style against a team like Georgia with the defensive line that they have a bunch of guys that are defensive line that are going to be in the top 20 in the NFL draft this year. You know what I mean? You got one guy that's going to be picked in the top 5 that's an animal. And it's too much NFL ready talent in Georgia's defensive side of the football. It's just the way, the only way you beat a team like that is if you have an up-tempo, fast offense, quick, get the ball out of your hand. Them trying to go against strength is not going to be a good outcome for Michigan. And Coach
Harbaugh's not going to run for 250 yards on them.
Yeah, there's no 250 yards on Georgia. Nope. And also, Coach Harbaugh kind of has tunnel vision with the way he coaches.
Yeah.
Coach
he's Harbaugh, very much like Les Miles was, where he's like, I like to impose my will on you. Yeah, but what if you can't? Yeah. You got to do something else.
We want
like 35-3. And
you ain't imposing your will on anybody at that point. Mm-hmm. So, I'm definitely got to go against you on that one.
Well, I think John's actually on Georgia on that one, so I think you're only going against me. But I was more just saying that, like, I think that the money is probably going heavily on Michigan, and so like the counter narrative might actually be that Georgia is a little underbought, and so
I just want to go against somebody. I just want to go against somebody. We keep agreeing on everything, all three of us.
You said you were going against us, and we both like Georgia in that game. But I will say this: it would have been interesting to see if those matchups had been different. If it was Michigan against Alabama, and then Georgia against Cincinnati, you might actually have a chance of seeing like Cincinnati, Michigan. But I don't know. I still think you're gonna see Georgia and Alabama in a rematch of not just this year's SEC championship, but the national championship from 3 years ago.
Yeah. It might play out a little differently, but I doubt it.
I doubt it too. What do you think? Is there any chance that we see JT Daniels come in for Stetson Bennett at some point in the playoff, or is Kirby Smart just kind of like stubborn as hell on like not putting him in there?
That's a great question. Well, that's where you mentioned Les Miles. I mean, you can't be going into that semifinal. It's all hands on deck. It's like Game 7 in baseball. Every pitcher that can lift his arm off the table is going to be throwing.
Right.
I don't even have a feel for that. What do you think, Jonesy?
I don't know. I'm really. I don't know, man. I'm really torn because, like this year of college football has been really kind of hard for me to gauge. Like normally, pre-COVID, I had more of a line on what was going on, what players were coming in. But it's been so much movement this year. It's kind of hard for me to gauge. So I'm gonna have to defer to you as the expert on this one, man. Like I'm very, very confused on what's going on.
It's not just that. It's been that combined with the transfer portal just being exploited to like the nth degree over the last couple of years, where you got people like Arik Gilbert. All right, so I know. Look, I'm an LSU guy. Yes, okay, we get it. 5-star, like the highest, like basically since Vernon Davis, the highest level recruited, out of high school tight end in the history of the sport. Right, comes to LSU. He's out after like 6 games in the transfer portal. In 3 months, he was on 3 different rosters. He transferred to Florida, then he transferred to Georgia. So it's like, what are you doing, bro? Like he transferred to it was either Georgia or he went from one to the other. So he left LSU and went to either to Georgia and then ended up at Florida or vice versa. But he like basically committed to one and was ready to go be on campus and everything, and then put himself back in the portal and transferred again. And so it's like
that's crazy.
This stuff is red flags.
This stuff is insane. Yeah, exactly. That's what I think with a lot of this stuff is there is a certain level of, I get like Joe Burrow saw the writing on the wall when they said, okay, you're not going to be the starter, and he's like, well, I'm kind of running out of time. So let me go see where I can go somewhere else. These guys that are coming in and they're a freshman and they're transferring before they even get to see how the roster plays out in spring and summer.
That's a red flag, man.
Is a red flag to me.
That's a guy that doesn't want to compete. That's a guy that doesn't have an intrinsic belief in his own ability. Because if you're a freshman, you should feel like, you know what, eventually I'm going to beat this guy out.
And it doesn't matter who the coach is or what,
whoever. I'm going to beat him out because I'm that great. When you keep trying to play musical chairs to get your opportunity, to me, that is a huge, huge red flag. And not for nothing, what's going on in college football is to me, they're destroying what college football is built on. College football is built on tradition. College football is built on regional rivalries. College football is built on tradition, man. And it's just they've just ruined it. Look at the name of these bowls. Like, it's supposed to be a betting show, and that's the reason why I'm kind of like tuning out. Because I'm like, bro, it's like the Jim and Larry Sandwich Bowl. What the fuck are we talking about?
The Surf Pro First Responder Bowl.
Yeah, the Burger King Have It Your Way Bowl. What the fuck are we talking about right now? It's just crazy. I'm sorry, guys.
Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. The let's see,
it's really what it's called.
Yes, the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. This is Miami against Washington State. So like it used to always
Roto-Rooter Toilet Bowl.
I don't think we have that one, but they do have. So you got of course Lockheed Martin sponsors the Armed Forces Bowl. So that one makes sense.
Okay, but they had a Chick-fil-A Polynesian sauce bowl.
No, not quite. We got the Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl. My favorite though is the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl. That's Utah State and Oregon State. And so it's just it's like wow, these.
You know what? The one that kind of piqued my interest from a betting perspective. I don't want to turn this into I Got Next.
The Duke's Mayo Bowl.
No, not the Duke's. No. Pause. Wait, no. The Cheez-It Bowl. Okay. Iowa State versus Clemson. Some people have. They got Iowa State favored.
I got Clemson plus the 1.5 in that one. Yeah, that's what I got. I like Clemson plus the points, but Iowa State's they play tough.
Yeah, look, I'm gonna definitely take Clemson in that. Clemson hasn't fallen that much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Dabo Swinney with a couple of weeks to prepare for a game.
Yeah, you got to go with Dabo just from the talent they have on that roster. They're having a down year now, and he's lost a lot of his coordinators, and a lot of people have Dabo Swinney circled to leave and go to the National Football League because of college football's transfer portal rules, and he's a little bit over it as well. But I can't go against a generationally great coach. I just can't. So I'm taking Clemson.
He has reason to win that game too for recruiting rates.
Yeah. I mean, who you got in that one, John?
I actually don't have anything yet, but I certainly would lean Clemson because of what you said, and also Iowa State has gone through the gauntlet. They have played physical, hard-fought games all year long, and you just have to wonder how much is left in the tank for this.
Yeah.
That's
so on the one hand, it's an impressive schedule and an impressive performance against that schedule, but on the other hand, you get beat up along the way too. So,
and they're another team that's disappointed.
Yeah, because people are looking at it like, well, you got an underachieving Clemson team going against a top 10 defense. So you know what I mean? That just sets the stage for another letdown. But I can't see it, man. I can't see it. I got to go with Clemson on that one.
I'm looking at strength of schedule here. Clemson just a little bit weaker than what Iowa State played. Just marginally so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, incrementally. So is that just a metric thing, or is that like you know what I mean? Because a lot of these metrics, you got to trust the numbers, but a lot of the times when you talk about strength of schedule, it's kind of subjective. Because when I look at what conference you play in, as opposed to what conference that other team plays in, you know what I mean? To me, all conferences are not the same, man. Like, when you play against SEC teams and you know what I mean? It's a little different than playing against.
Yep. That's why I built the model that I'm trying to get automated now is my whole thing was I used to look at these people that would try to do like, oh, look, they played this team and they played this team and they played this team and these were in the top 15 or whatever, and all this. It's like, well, yeah, but all of those, you're using a lot of subjective metrics for who's good and who's not on these schedules, and then a lot of times you're only going one schedule deep. Okay, so you played against a schedule that has an average record of 60% winning percentage. But what was their schedule's winning percentage? And what was that schedule's winning percentage? And then you keep going deeper, multiple iterations in, and then you realize that like, oh, okay, well, the reason they were 60% winning percentage against that schedule is because when you go to that schedule's terrible that they were playing against. So you're playing against some teams that were playing against weak teams and piling up good records against poor teams. So it made your strength of schedule look good, but it's not really you got to go more layers deep than that. And that's what
the last time Notre Dame
superficial.
The last time Notre Dame was in a national championship game when they played Alabama, I would say that there were 3 or 4 teams in the SEC that would have dogged Notre Dame out.
Oh, absolutely.
Dogged them out. Like 3 or 4 teams that didn't even get a sniff of the national championship picture. So a lot of this stuff is very, very subjective.
That might have been the year that you had like it was like when Manziel, wasn't that when Manziel was at Texas A&M? Because I think that year you had like 6 SEC teams that all they had done was beat each other. Yeah. They had beaten everybody else in their schedules except each other. and they all had like they just kind of round robined each other and giving each other like one loss, maybe two losses.
So whoever lost last is who made it,
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so it's just I don't know, man. I just the way college football has changed in the last, especially with the transfer portal rules changing and them not being as stringent, it's very, very hard to get a gauge on, like kind of have a history and say, well, you know what, look, we know that we have this kid coming up, or we just, this kid's on a bench, or you kind of lose. That's why you know what, man, John, what you do is so respectable, man, because it's so hard to stay abreast of all of this stuff, man. And it's just, that's why a lot of times, if you notice, I'm not on a college football show a lot because I don't like to get on and talk about what I don't know.
Yeah,
I love to talk about what I do know, but I don't talk about what I don't. So
yeah, John has a lot of data that this stuff goes deep. That's why I was saying like the strength of schedule is one thing, but John's like looking at like, no, but like you got to look at their strength of schedule against teams that did this, and it's like taking it to that next step where it's not just their schedule, has 100 wins and 47 losses or something like that. It's like no, but they're 1-12 against teams that actually, I don't know, whatever the number might be. It gives you that next layer that actually like opens up a new level of like, okay, now I have some confidence in this. So a couple of things before we go. One is there any hope? LSU is a 1-point dog in the Tax Act Texas Bowl. I know you hate Brian Kelly. I'm not a big fan of the hire. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago when they first hired him on the show. But against K-State, I've seen them play. Like they've had some impressive performances and some not so much. Just like LSU, I think it's a kind of a really good matchup. Does Brian Kelly coming in give LSU any sort of an edge?
I really don't think so. That's one because of that situation and the exiting of so many players into the portal from LSU. I mean, why else are they going in the portal? The only thing that's changed is the head coach, and it's vastly different than Orgeron was. I mean, it's polar opposite. I think Orgeron would be a guy that I would go through fire to play for. Like he just seems to be like
he loves the kids. Yeah,
and he has your back as a player. Whereas I don't see that at all with Kelly. Like I mean, he'll throw you under the bus at any moment. And it's just such a vast culture change. I'm gonna suggest laying off the game.
Okay. That's a good point. You don't have to bet every game. Like sometimes it's good to just avoid one, and that's a win in and of itself.
Yeah, that game looks like you're setting the stage for a little failure because Brian Kelly is a very transactional coach. He's one of those guys that wants you to run through the wall for him, and you can do X, Y, and Z for him. But the minute you mess up, he's gonna skewer you. And he's really the kind of guy that should have went from Notre Dame and tried to go to the National Football League. He should probably coach in the pros, and probably be a positional coach in the pros, not a head coach because he hasn't done anything.
O-line coach or something like that.
Something like that because he's very transactional, man. Like he's not a guy that you believe in. And he's not a guy that you believe has your back. And I believe that LSU, and I hate to say it, is I think this experiment's going to wind up same as Urban Meyer with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I don't like it, but I have a hard time disagreeing with you. So my final question would be: so the good point about bringing avoiding some games when it's just not there. Like if you don't see an angle, you need to just take your money elsewhere where there's an angle that gives you more confidence. The last question I want to say is like, so when it comes to bowl season, how late up until the kickoff of the game are you still kind of waiting for information to give you an edge, line movement or anything like that? Because I know it's when you're going week to week during the college football season, everything is very much on a rhythm, on a schedule. Everybody's playing the same day roughly. You have some Friday games, some Thursday games. For the most part, everybody plays on Saturday. With this, it's a little different. You have this long, stretched out people playing almost every day. What kind of is your rhythm for bowl games and when you like to have your final decision on whether to bet a game and then which way to go?
That's a great question. It can range from as many as 5 days to 72 hours.
Okay.
I think once you get inside 72 hours, it would take something monumental, suspension of the starting quarterback, or a head coach, being found in his restaurant doing something inappropriate.
Right.
I had to mention that. Yeah. By the way, I was wondering. I wonder if Brian Kelly owns any restaurants.
I don't think
we could check that out too.
I don't think he's won enough to warrant that.
Oh God.
He might own a hot dog cart.
He does try to speak in a Cajun
there
accent,
you go.
though, sometimes when or a Southern accent when he's speaking to the crowd for the first time. But
he's a Yankee, man. He's a Yankee all the way through.
So you try to do about 3 days out. You're kind of ready to go.
Yeah, locked and loaded.
Something crazy happens, suspensions wise, or something else. Yep. Okay. All right. So then what? To let you kind of finish it off. Sports Memo is where to go. I'll kind of pull up. Let me pull this. I had this ready to go, and then I forgot about it. Let's see. But you guys have quite. I'm going to pull up the live odds page that you have. You have so many different books that you're looking at. Where can people go to get the best info on your picks as these games come up? I see we got Coastal Carolina and Northern Illinois going in the Camping World Stadium. I don't know what bowl it is. The Cure Bowl. Okay. Is the Cure going to be playing at halftime? That would be cool. No, but in Orlando. So where can they go? What's the best way to go to get your picks as we go through this?
It'd be sportsmemo.com and my profile page, which the abbreviated version is SM is in sportsmemo.buzz, BUZZ/JRs, and John Ryan. That lists everything, all the subscriptions. There's some great deals across the board in all the sports. On those betting odds, too, for those that are starting out in betting, I would recommend following Pinnacle and Heritage as your leaders. So if you see DraftKings at -3, and there's another book maybe at -3, but Heritage and Penny are at -2.5, that's important to know because they're all real betting lines, but the real line is kind of driven by those two, in my opinion.
Right.
So those are the two to follow on, and I love that page, by the way. And it's not because I'm on Sports Memo. I sometimes go to wagertalk.com and use their odds page, which is the same thing.
Okay.
Because both sites are owned by the same co-founders of WagerTalk. So other than that, I think that's about the only place. We don't have competing shows, but I host about 80% of the shows on Sports Memo. They humbly said they call me the face of Sports Memo, and I'm trying to get the surgery done to improve that look. But it's really cost prohibitive. You can only do so much, right?
John, don't please listen. You're fine how you are, man. Don't go in here with your nose falling off like Michael Jackson.
Yeah, well, I was thinking of growing a ponytail or something to make me stand out, but that's probably not a good idea either.
There's always that. Well, look, bro, we appreciate you coming on. This is good stuff, and we're gonna keep in touch so that we can keep learning from each other and also supporting each other's work, because you do great stuff, and I want our audience to be able to see this stuff so that they can make good decisions when it comes time to lay that money down and have some fun, because it can be fun. Like we were talking earlier about some of these games that you avoid. If you want to throw $5 at something to just to kind of like give yourself a little reason to enjoy the game while you're sitting there watching it at lunch or something, that's one thing. But don't go throw in 10% of your bankroll at one of these games just because you feel like you have to put something on something. Make sure you got an angle that gives you some real confidence, and Sports Memo is a great place to get that angle. So
that's right. If you're going to be a man of order,
yeah, there you go.
You got to bet responsible, right? Yeah. If you're going to bet responsible, you got to be informed. So if you're going to get informed, you need to deal with John Ryan. You need to tap in with I Got Next. And you also got to remember, this is not financial advice.
Right.
And we in no way are telling you what to do.
But these numbers are pretty impressive. for John Ryan's success rate so far this year. So we like it, we dig it, and we appreciate you coming on, folks. We will see you guys on Tuesday with the next episode of I Got Next. John Ryan, again, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Peace, everybody.
Peace.